The views expressed on this episode, as with all episodes of We Hate Your Baby Daddy, are based solely on our personal opinions and shit we heard in the streets.
The content here should not be taken as indisputable fact. This show is for entertainment purposes only, so enjoy and don't come for us.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of We Hate Your Baby Daddy with Bree and Dee.
Hello.
And as you can see, we are going to talk about Woody Allen today. And if you know anything about this man, you should know that we're going to give you a trigger warning, which, we hate to do that 2 episodes in a row, but, this man. Okay, I'm sorry, Dee. Go ahead and warn the people.
Always have to break the bad news. So, trigger warning, this episode will deal with CSA, which is child sexual abuse, unfortunately, if you do not know that acronym, grooming, and several forms of domestic abuse in a way. So, please use discretion when listening and feel free to switch over to one of our more lighthearted episodes. We have a bunch. They're funny. You won't get bummed out. There won't be, something upsetting that'll pop up in the middle. So, if this content doesn't suit you, please do that. Thank you, and please stay safe.
Stay safe. So, before we jump into our life updates, I wanted to personally apologize to our listeners because, and technically this is a man's fault, and I'll get into in a minute, but I want to try to take some accountability for in the last episode. So I was eating, we record after our kids are asleep, and for most moms, it's like when you finally get some time to eat and like have a meal without little hands digging in your bowl, that's the time that we record. So I was eating and I didn't realize that my microphone was picking it up. And so here's why it's a man's fault. If you recall, for Christmas, my boyfriend, the boyfriend of the show, he bought us fancy recording equipment. And so the microphone, I have like the top of the line, like Yeti, blue, no, what is it called? I don't know. It's a blue microphone and it picks up everything. And I just had no idea it was like chewing, me scraping the bowl. Like my friend was like, dude, I couldn't even finish the episode. She's like, you chewing? She's like, that was triggering. She's like, that should have had a trigger warning. So that's why it's a man's fault. Nobody told him to do that. So anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But
if you're into that, it's free as ASMR.
That's right. It was a little sensual, honestly. So, so yeah. I mean, maybe some of you find chewing and swallowing and bowl scraping relaxing. Me personally, I did it, and I heard the ending of the episode, and I edit the episodes, and I still didn't hear it, so I don't know what that was about. But anyway, I'm just apologizing for that. It will not happen again. Next time I'm stuffing my face, I will mute it. so if you hear that, sorry.
And mind you, we're usually very careful because on the Rick Ross episode, we kept talking about Wingstop so much, we both ordered it in the middle of recording.
We did. We did. I got it actually the next day because I was like, he was over the next day. I was like, babe, Wingstop, babe, Wingstop. He's like, oh my God, calm down. I just like yell stuff at him.
We were both like, oh, they got coupons right now.
Like, whenever he like wants to take me shopping, he's like, where do you want to go? I just start yelling, Bloomies, babe, Bloomies. The first time I said that, he's like, babe, what is Bloomies? I'm like, Bloomingdale's, duh. Bloomies. Like I start yelling, Wingstop. Like, I don't know why I'm like that.
Time to go.
And you know what? He loves it here. So anyway, life updates. Darling D, what's new with you?
Oh, I'm just finally getting around to getting an autism test. I think we all saw this coming. So I am now licensed.
We did not all see this coming. What are you talking about?
Oh no, we all saw this coming. I was actually, so funny story, I was actually waiting outside, like having a conversation with the lady, and if you don't know, you know, it's the lady, and she was screening me. and a guy just saw me, and I don't know, I guess because I'm breathtaking, he did an illegal U-turn, which scared the shit out of me, so I'm
Like,
already scared.
turn on his brakes, left rubber marks on the pavement
Yeah, it
turning around.
terrified me, and then he pulled up right in front of me, and he was, like, mumbling, like, Philly guy somewhere, "Yo, baby, what's your name? What's your number?" I'm like, I was like, "I'm on a very important phone call." And he was like, "I don't care about none of that." I'm like, "Well, can I have $50?" He said, "No, take your medicine." And then he took another illegal U-turn to get the fuck away from me and sped off even faster. And she heard all of that, and she just cut the screening short. She was like, "We'll see you Monday." I was like, "Okay." So,
Oh my god. I think it was Holly Madison did, like, an autism screening and, found out that she had it, and she was like, "That explains so much," because, like, I'm a big fan of hers, and I see how she is, like, she researches things. Like, I see myself in her sometimes because it's like, you get really into a subject, you hyper fixate on it. Like, I get like that a lot, and I'm like, she made it so that it's, like, a little bit destigmatized for me to wanna look into it as well, so I think it's cool that you're sharing that you got that screening done, that's cool.
yeah, I don't think that it's embarrassing. Honestly, it's just gonna make my life easier because, like,
Right, knowing
I've
what's up.
always had, like, the symptoms of it. Like, I don't like when I was like a kid, like my parents would be like, "Oh, it'd be so funny when we would turn the light on in the room, you would start screaming and say, 'Turn the light off.'" And I'm like, I don't think that I think I don't think that was
Failing to see the hilarity here.
they're like, "Oh, when we put a shirt on you, you would scream because you would say the tag was bothering you." I'm like,
Oh my goodness. I
I'm
hate
like,
that
"Yeah."
too. Like, or certain textures of fabric, like, touching me, like, I cannot stand that.
Oh, I absolutely cannot touch styrofoam or
Ooh,
cardboard or I will vomit. I'm
ugh,
dead serious. I can't
I
even
don't
look at
blame
it.
you.
I'll throw up.
And just the sound of styrofoam rubbing against other styrofoam, ugh.
And it's not misophonia or anything, like, I can hear other things, it's just textures.
Yeah, I totally understand what you mean.
So, yeah, I am now licensed.
Good for you. That's awesome. Um, for me, so I just had my 34th birthday, um, on Wednesday the 17th, and my dad called me. He calls me like he usually does and sings happy birthday. And then he was just like, "Damn, you're 34 and a mom. That's crazy." I was like, "Thanks, dad."
Dad?
As if I didn't already realize. Yes, I'm aging, dad. Um, but no, it was good. My boyfriend took me to a candlelight concert. You probably get like ads for those on Facebook. I see them all the time. And I saw one that was like spring themed. So it was like flowers everywhere, which is like my thing. And they were doing a tribute to Coldplay. And I was like, I love Coldplay. I'm not ashamed to admit it. So so we went. He got me like a huge bouquet of red roses. He got me this necklace. I'm like dripped in like boyfriend jewelry right now. I'm wearing the Cuban that he got me for Valentine's Day, and this it's like a diamond, like it's like a 3 carat diamond, like heart charm necklace. And like he got it to match the bracelet that he got me with the infinity heart thing with the diamond. He was like, I wanted like it to match. And I'm like, I just feel like you're trying to tell me something with all this heart and like infinity things. And he got it like laser engraved on the back, which you can't see, it's too small. But it says I love you. And I was like, oh, that's so fucking sweet. So
That's
it
so
was a really good
sweet.
birthday. I know he's a great at picking out
Very
jewelry.
thoughtful. I
Very
love a man
thoughtful.
that pays attention to details because it's all in the details, like, you're paying attention to what I like instead of just giving me
Exactly.
a generic thing.
Because when I told him I wanted a Cuban, I was literally just shouting at him like I always do, "Cubans, babe, Cubans!" And he was like, "Babe," he's not from here. English not his first language. He's like, "What are you talking about? What do you mean with Cubans?" I'm like, "Babe, Glorilla, the rapper Cubans." He was like, "Okay." And so he picked it. He picks all my jewelry. Like he's really good at that. And so this weekend, um, Corey came up and like a whole bunch of my friends, we just met out like in this little area that we go to in our town. It was so nice. We had dinner. We were just laughing, cackling. The weather was nice. We're sitting outside. I was like, you know what? I like older birthdays. Like when I was younger, it would be like, oh, let's go to the club. Like now that I'm older, I'm like sitting outside, having some margaritas, shooting the shit, like with my homies at like 7 p.m. Like that's what I like to do. So yeah, it was nice.
I'm glad you had fun and it wasn't complicated.
But yeah, it was really nice. So how's preschool been? I meant to ask you, like, how's that been going?
She cries every single time I pick her up, and I'm kind of scared that the mandated reporter is going to be like, "How are things going on at home?" But I'm like, "No, she just really likes it here.
I love
Like she's
that.
not dreading coming home with me. Please don't send somebody out.
I don't do anything to her but feed her.
Like please, God, don't send somebody to the house."
I'm so dead. I mean, that gives me hope because I mean, I know that my daughter would be okay in daycare. It's just me. I'm so attached and psychotic that always afraid. But I mean, if like seeing you do stuff, like I always say D is like my mom goals because like when I was pregnant, I would always be
Oh,
like, no, like remember when I was pregnant, I'd be like, the fetus is moving. What do I do? I would always interrupt. She's like, Bree, calm down. Fetuses move inside you. Like, and it's just been like that every step of the way. Like, I'm always asking her for advice, and she's always my role model. So that like makes me feel good that she's thriving in daycare.
and you're my role model in like every other aspect of life because I be struggling. That's why I'm
Bye.
taking the autism test.
Stop. Goodbye.
No, things aren't adding up. Like
I'm weak. We are each other's role models and support, and that's why we're such good friends, and I love it. Um, my daughter's doing good. Me and Drunky Crashy are like mostly getting along. Like again, our court date isn't for another 4 months. So I mean, he tries to act like we're like besties and buddy buddy, and I just try to keep it that way, like because I mean, I don't walk on eggshells, but it's also like I don't want to antagonize him because then he'll do something. You know what I mean? So I just try to keep it chill.
yeah, ride the wave. I try to like kind of keep it on the happier side with mine because like around this time of year is usually when he gets really angry at me because this is this is the time of year that I left him, so I try to distract him
Oh,
about it. So like I send him memes and try to
oh,
distract him so he won't get pissed and file a motion.
this is so funny. I think I left mine around this time last year. Or we broke up I think in March, but he didn't move out until like I think it was end of April, beginning of May, something like that. Ugh, what a nightmare
So
that
yeah,
was.
he gets really angsty this time of year, and usually I get something in the mail. But I've been talking to him pretty regularly, and he hasn't sent anything, so I think he's pretty happy.
That's good. You know, look at us being mature with our crazy baby daddies.
He did not appreciate me waking him up every morning with Dr. Umar videos, so he was like, "That's not nice. Stop doing that."
About how race mixing is wrong.
Yeah, probably like Grand Rising Snow Prince. He's like, "Stop that."
I'm so dead. Not Snow Prince. Oh man. So, we were wondering if you guys like the more serious episodes that we do, or like more the fun, like pop culture ones, or like the personal ones. Like we loved having guests, like our last guest, the money making mother. Like she was so funny. Like I was cackling, like just her vibe, the way she talks, like she's just so cool. So we love to have more guests. Like if you feel like you would just have a lot to get off your chest, and it's anonymous, of course. Like we'll use a nickname for you, for anybody that you talk about. Feel free to come on the show, reach out to us, or just send us a story. We'll read it on the show. We used to do that all the time, but it's like I think people are shy to kind of like send their stories out, but like I feel like we try to be very respectful about it. So feel free to send us your stories. And we actually do have an upcoming collab episode with another. It's a very popular podcast with the hosts are based actually in Canada, and we connected in this mom group. We're not going to tell you any more details than that yet, but I'm so excited. Like their show's hilarious. But you'll see when we get into that. But just to remind you guys, so this is going to be a serious episode. We do like joke around a lot, but like some of the subject matter, just like you saw in like the OJ episode, it gets a little deep, it gets a little heavy. So, like Dee said in the beginning, if it's not your vibe, like don't ruin your day. Go listen to something like funnier, like Offset, or I mean, the 50 Cent episode was really fucking funny.
It
Or
was, but like with OJ, oh, I thought OJ was really funny because it was like the ridiculousness of it, but he also
mm-hmm.
killed two people.
He
Like we
did
can't
that
get
we know
around
of.
it. So like we got really flat. Like yeah, he killed two people, but also he stole cable, like somebody's crackhead uncle, and like how can you not laugh at that? Like what?
Yeah, so we have a kind of a dark sense of humor, and me and Dee, we've been through things in our lives, so it's like, stuff like like that. There's just the absurdity is funny, but we have some more lighthearted ones like Offset, 50 Cent, Rick Ross is pretty funny. Chris Brown, even though he's like the woman puncher, I mean, he fought with a bag of chips, so check out one of those. But otherwise, let's go ahead and jump into the episode.
All right, we're going to start off with his early life because we always have to go to the root of the shit tree. So, Haywood Allen was born Alan Stewart Konigsberg on November 30th, 1935 in the Bronx, and he was raised in Brooklyn. Haywood, I'm going to say, is not a good name for a sexual predator. And then he changed it to Woody, and I don't think that helped. Moving on.
I'm so confused. Did he choose the name Haywood? Because he was
Sure
born
did.
Alan Stewart Konigsberg. He chose Haywood.
Mm-hmm.
And then went by Woody.
Yep.
The jokes write
he
themselves.
was like in Hollywood, and like Hollywood didn't like Jewish people, and going around being called Konigsberg is not. You ain't going to get your foot in the door.
He could have just been Stewart Allen Stewart. I mean, look at Jon Stewart. He changed his last name from something Jewish to Stewart. But Haywood, that's the name he chose. You know what? It was a different time.
Yeah, I can't wrap my head around it. So, his parents are ethnically from Austria and Lithuania, but they were born and raised on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. They were Jewish, and they hated each other. And he was estranged from his mom because she was authoritarian and ill-tempered, which just means that she was a bitch, honestly. You didn't have to use words about it.
It's Woody Allen, though, so it could have been that she was just normal, like, hey, pick up your laundry. And it was like, Mom, you bitch. Like,
okay.
We'll get to that.
Sorry.
We'll get to that. I'll pick it up, I guess.
They shipped him off to summer camps and Hebrew school because they really didn't want him around the house, honestly. And he gained favor with his peers with cards, jokes, and magic tricks like a true fucking nerd. Nerd. Eventually, those jokes became published, and they were so successful that he started earning more money than both of his parents combined. But like his mom was a bookkeeper and his father was like a jewelry engraver and a waiter. So I don't know if that's like a major feat, but he was like 17 while he did it. So I would, like guess about it, maybe.
That's the thing, like back then in New York, you could be a bookkeeper married to a jewelry engraver / waiter, and your kids earning money from publishing jokes, and you guys were like living on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, like fine. Today, impossible. Impossible situation.
Like I can't wrap my head around that.
Inflation changed everything. Wages stagnated, cost of living went right on up. So I'm sorry. Anyway.
All right. So he went to NYU and he studied communication and film. He failed, and then he dropped out. And then he taught at the new school. And it was like, why the fuck were they letting his ass teach after dropping out? Like, what?
I wouldn't have known. I was like, motherfucking white privilege. Like, I mean, I can't imagine a situation where I'm like, you know what? I dropped out. Like, those who can't do teach. Like, no, nigga. Like, you can't be a teacher at the new school, especially, which is like, isn't that a pretty prestigious school?
Yeah, it's like I didn't do a good job at NYU, but here I am.
Yeah, what the fuck? So, yeah, anyway.
So, to be honest with you guys, we always gonna preface this, but this is We Hate Your Baby Daddy. We are not film snobs or hipsters, and we really, really do not give a fuck about his lame ass pretentious films, and we're not cataloging them here or discussing his shitty career. Boo. Tomato, tomato.
Just like, in past episodes, we don't tend to talk about the music of the singers, the politics of the politicians. We don't focus on that stuff. We talk about these people in the context of their relationships as baby daddies. So I don't give a fuck about his little fucking films. I mean, we are gonna roast them a tiny bit, but that's not what this is about. We hate baby daddies. We don't give a fuck about films. So
Yeah, so we
yes,
will mention that, like, if you ever watch a Woody Allen movie, if you watch one, you watch them all. They're all gross. They're all the same. They all have the same fucking jokes. They play the
pretentious.
same character.
The same
Have the
nervous,
same-
squirrely little.
Yeah, like oh,
Mm,
oh boy, she's a young girl. Like oh god, but yeah.
ugh.
In every single one, he's lusting after like a teenager, and he's always married. Like it's always an affair. He's lusting after a teenager or like a young college student, and I swear to God, the girl is never over the age of like 22 or 23. Like that's a common theme here.
It's disgusting. And art, imitates life or whatever. Life imitates art, whatever. I put in the notes, I was like, I feel like so Woody Allen, started directing movies like ages and ages and ages ago. And I feel like he's one of the main reasons why there's this like film trope where you see a character in a movie, like any movie George Clooney's been in, for example, where George Clooney is like late 40s, early 50s, but the love interest in the movie is like 23, 25. But they kind of make them act as around they're like the same age, like they can relate to each other, which that confused moviegoers for generations because that's not real life. Like, if you dated on a younger person, you can't relate to them. Like, a man trying to relate to a young woman right now, like going on TikTok and stuff, he's like, I don't get it. He'll get mad and just start flipping things over. Like, his Alzheimer's starts to get him. But no, like, I mean, I really think this sort of movie trope kind of like originated with like the Woody Allen era of filmmaking. So I do put some of the blame for that on him.
Oh, definitely, and I think it just like normalized that in like society. Like Hollywood tries to normalize it. Like it's perfectly fine for a 20-year-old girl to date a 50-year-old guy. That's normal. Age gaps are like it's. I
No,
could
it's
not like.
like, I mean, if you ever
I can't
saw
wrap my head
like
around that. Like just sitting down and having a conversation with a 45-year-old man makes my head hurt. I don't like
no, seriously, they're so gloom and doom. But no, like, did you guys see like Pretty Woman, which is a movie from like the 90s? And it's like Richard Gere and Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts is like 18 in that movie, and Richard Gere is like in his 40s. And so when I first saw that movie in the 90s, I was a kid. And so it didn't occur to me that the actors were very different ages. And so I know a lot of other people my age watching those kind of movies felt the same. And it just kind of fucks you up, thinking like, oh, women mature faster than men. Lie. That is a lie. Or that, oh, men, they age like fine wine. Lie. Like,
I can attest
so
to that.
yeah. Yeah, Party City Skeleton not aging like fine wine.
Poor bastard.
um but I'm sorry, go on.
So yeah, we're just going to talk about how he's a piece of shit and why he's super hateable. But yeah, we just summarized his films. I think I watched like one a really long time ago. Went bleh. Never watching number one again. That was
It's
pretty
like
young
his
when I watched.
acting is so uncomfortable and awkward, and he's so weird, and like you said, he plays the same frickin' character. Like, and it's always like the New York like backdrop. Like he's so in love with frickin' New York, and you know what? You remember like Sex and the City right now is having like a cultural renaissance because it's on Netflix, and there's this scene in Sex and the City because I've seen that show a million times, where you know what? We'll get into it, but Carrie makes a comment about how Woody and Mia Farrow like lived across from each other, not in the same house, and she was like, "That's probably like every man's dream." And it's like, no. Like, there's just people like Woody Allen's dream, and we'll get into why he would not want to live in the same house as his own wife. But so let's just hop into his relationships. So normally we kind of don't talk about the ones where they don't have children because you know that's not the point of the show. But I feel like, you know, this kind of adds context. So Um, his first wife, Harlene Rosen, which is a Jewish last name. But anyway, Harlene Rosen, they were married from 1956 to 1959. They did not have children. So he was 20 and she was 17 years old when they got married. And people would try to tell you, "Oh, that was back in the late 50s. It was normal." Like, okay, whatever, think what you want. But anyway, so um, there was an incident where she was sexually assaulted outside of her apartment, and the newspapers reported that she was violated. And so Woody Allen did a stand up act, and he said, and I quote, "Knowing my ex wife, it probably wasn't a traffic violation." Like just making light of the fact that she was sexually violated. And so she sued him over that joke, which I'm like, thank God somebody did something. Like you can see it in the rest of this episode. Like there's a strong lack of accountability. But he went on the Dick Cavett show later and repeated the joke. And then he said that she had sued him for $1 million, which I'm like, good for her. Like he owed her that. Like they were only married, what, 3 years, and he's making light of her sexual assault. So mind you, they married when she was 17. So adding three to that, she would have been 20 years old when they got divorced. Like she was a young person. So that's big and bad of her to sue him. So good for
Yeah, and then
her.
she immediately got like sexually assaulted after their divorce, and he's like, "Ha, you got sexually assaulted. Let me have stand up about it." It's like, dude, I was married to you for 3 years, and you can't have empathy for me about that. Like that sets the tone
Evil.
about the person that we're about to roast.
Right. And so his next wife, he was married to from 1966 to 1970. They also did not have kids. And apparently, he was like showing interest in her when he was already married to Harlene. Again, they were only married for 3 years. He just could not keep that wandering googly eye from wandering.
Googly-eyed motherfucker. I hate guys with glasses.
And so she does not complain about him. Like, she still refers to him as being like talented. And you know, this is something about like older generations that we'll go on to talk about, but there's the responses when you're faced with a situation where you don't know how to act. So you have like fight or flight response, but there's also like fawning, and I can't remember the other one. But in this case, when you see a woman who is married to this crazy, crazy man and won't speak badly of him, it's not really even probably so much that she supports him, but it's like he's a very powerful man in Hollywood. And so it's like just to protect yourself, it's just better to say, okay, yeah, he's talented. I don't want to talk about it anymore because you just want to protect yourself. So, I mean, if you've seen a Woody Allen movie, it's like a cultural delusion to call him talented. I'm sorry, they're not good, but anyway.
People that think Woody Allen movies are good are people that think liking something ironically and saying that you like something ironically. That's the person that would say a Woody Allen movie is good.
And they would unironically say it was good. Like people who are really in love with Quentin Tarantino It's like I can see where, the movies are entertaining, but to be like, "Oh, he's the greatest director of all time." Like, relax, okay? It's not that good. Um, but anyway, does he have kids? He needs to get an episode. So anyway, the next person that he was with that we're gonna mention, so he didn't actually marry her. He had a brief fling with Diane Keaton, who is an actress. You've probably seen her in some films. Um, he cheated with her while he was with Mia Farrow, and Mia actually also cheated on him with Frank Sinatra, which we'll talk about. We'll get into that. But I mean, this is like the boomer Hollywood. Like, boomers are old now. Even though they still kind of run Hollywood to a certain degree, like, it's not like at this time there was no social media. They were all just passing each other around, like back and forth forever. It was disgusting. They were basically all swingers. So when Diane Keaton was asked about the sexual assault allegations against the children, she told people to get over it and she blamed victim culture. And she claims Woody is her friend and she says, quote unquote, "I believe him." Like to this day, that's how she feels about it. And we'll get into the fact that he married his own daughter. But anyway, this is like boomer ass bitch kind of thing to say. Like, I mean, even if that's how you privately felt, like, just keep it to yourself. They just don't know how. They just really don't know how.
Can we point
So,
out that she admitted that the person was a victim and she didn't deny the accusations?
right.
Like, you basically put an X on this man's back, bitch. What?
Victim culture, she calls it. Like, that's disgusting. We don't have victim culture. What we have is a rape culture that protects men and doesn't help victims. That's what we have, Diane Keaton.
For,
Wish you were a man so you could get an episode.
not even that. It's just like to get over something, you have to admit that it happened. So what are you talking about?
It's just kind of like, Whoopi Goldberg's commentary on Roman Polanski. Like, because he literally, like, raped someone. And Whoopi's like, well, it was the 70s. It was a different time. And everybody's like, what the fuck are you talking about? It was a fucking different time. She was like 13. Anyway, I'm sorry. You'll see a lot of parallels between, like, people like Roman Polanski and, like, Woody Allen. Just powerful Hollywood directors. They just get away with anything. And you have, like, female enablers. So the next person is Stacey Nelkin. So Stacey Nelkin is a fucking weirdo, and she was the inspiration for a movie called Manhattan, where he lusts after a teenager, which is like all of his movies. So that doesn't really tell you anything. That could be any. You could say a movie where someone lusts after a teenager, like, oh, Woody Allen. I've seen it. So she was 17 years old and he was 41 when they dated. And she took his side. Of course she did. When the CSA allegations came out, he was dating her while she was still in high school. Like, it's giving like Kris Jenner and like Robert Kardashian, like high school. And she says, and I quote, "He was very considerate. I rarely slept over. He was adamant about me not staying so I'd be at school on time." And I'm like, this is giving Jerry Seinfeld because people don't know this. Like, Jerry Seinfeld's like a billionaire, and I think he's trying to like scrub the like world of that he did this, but he dated this girl named Shoshana, and she was a teenager, like 17 years old, and he was a very successful comedian with like a hit TV show, Seinfeld. And they have the same kind of relationship, like, oh, gotta make sure you get to high school on time. And then if you ask Shoshana, she's like, "Oh, we had to break up because like it was just so much paparazzi and I'm just trying to go to high school." It's like, you're a child. These are grown men. Like, it's okay to realize that certain things were wrong. But what I've come to realize, one of my friends actually told me this. She's like, she told me that she felt like it's hard for a lot of victims to accept that they've been victimized, because it's like if you accept that you were a victim, then you also have to accept that you're not getting any justice, you know? And so I think that's kind of what you'll see with people like um Stacey Nelkin. It's like 17 and 41. You weren't just a mature 17-year-old. He wasn't just an immature 41-year-old, which we'll get into that he tried to portray himself that way, but that's not a thing. Um but yeah, so
That quote is mind blowing
um
though. It's just like he was so considerate of me. He didn't let me spend the night after having sex with me. He sent me home so I could go home and get ready for
I
high
wonder what her
school.
parents thought.
She said her mom
Oh my
approved of
god.
it.
Ugh. I would literally stab Woody Allen in the neck, but so so the interviewer asked her like if this type of relationship is a pattern with her, because back then it was okay to be like, oh, so are you 17? You like dating older guys? Like, is this like a pattern for you? They wouldn't say, hey, maybe you're being groomed. Maybe I should call somebody. But anyway, that's what they asked her, and she said, and I quote, "What do you mean a pattern? I'm 19."
How could it be a
Like,
pattern? I just started out.
it's like, so
The
you're
sad
admitting,
thing
okay,
is her frontal lobe hasn't fully developed yet, so I don't think she has a
wasn't even
full
close.
understanding of irony.
Wasn't even close. She was probably just still learning about irony in English class at that point. So, you know, the flashcards and they're like situational irony, like different types. She was still learning what it meant. But anyway, so she said later on that she spent years in psychotherapy trying to learn how to undo what he did to her. But to this day, as far as we know, she still defends him. So once again, boomer bitch activities like stop defending these men.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I went to every single therapist in New York to try to undo the damage he did, but he didn't do anything wrong. It's just like,
He was so considerate. He dropped me off at my high school. Like, bitch. Oh man.
okay, so we saved the best for last in the women that he's been involved with. I wouldn't even say this is the best, but yeah. So we are going to talk about Mia Farrow. So Woody and Mia have a very complicated family tree, as we have already discussed. We'll try to break it down as simply as possible. It's not even like a wreath like the royals. It's kind of like a shrub, a vine, a beanstalk. We really don't know because it kind of like doubles back in on itself, but not like a wreath. It's not a circle. So
It's like an Ouroboros. It's
yeah,
like, you know, the snake's eating its own tail forever.
yeah, it's really bad. I don't even think it's like a plant at this point.
Right? Some carnivorous plant that hasn't been discovered
Yeah,
yet.
it's bad. So it really gave me a headache to do this. There's like a lot of things added and taken out. A lot of people died. It's dark. It gave me a headache. So contrary to popular belief, Woody Allen never married her. They just were boyfriend and girlfriend, which just makes him a baby daddy to the umph degree.
Quintessential baby daddy. You don't even marry your baby mama. I mean, and I never knew that. I thought that they did get married, but
You would
yeah, no,
think
didn't
when
happen.
they talk about their court case, it wasn't like a divorce case. It was literally a CSA investigation. No, it wasn't like, yeah,
Right.
they tried to be like, oh, it was like a divorce. No, it wasn't. Like I saw the court document. It was just a CSA investigation.
And as we'll get into later, he has a very good like PR team. And so people would think, you know, he was on the up and up, married to an adult woman before everything went to hell, but no. But anyway, go on.
And we're going to make this abundantly clear too. I don't think we can take sides on either one with the baby mama or the baby daddy. I think we can just side with the children here because Mia Farrow is pretty shitty herself. She didn't touch any of the kids though, as far as we can tell. She just collects minority children to hit and psychologically torture, and she collects them like infinity stones. And she had a thing for collecting Asian children in the 70s, pretty much because they were like more like they were just easy to collect during the wars in the 70s. And then she moved on to black children in the 90s because they were easy to collect because of the crack epidemic. And I think we reached our crack quota of the episode. So.
And I was like, Big Crack should be sponsoring us because of how many episodes. I mean, somebody should go through and be like, every time we mention crack, like write it down. It's crazy how much crack comes up. But like, I mean, we don't have any sponsors yet. So if Big Crack, if you're listening to this, listen, we're not we're not too good to take your money. I'm just kidding. But yes, it comes up. It comes up a lot. So sorry, continue.
So their relationship, they met in 1979 and they started dating in 1980. They were together for 12 years until their relationship ended when he had an affair with their adopted daughter. Yes, that happened. Mia said that she has forgiven Michael Caine for introducing her to Woody, which is hilarious.
That is funny because it's like Michael Caine. I mean, as far as I know, he's just like this unassuming British actor. He just is like, "Oh, Mia, here's Woody," and then all hell broke loose for the rest of their lives.
He's probably like, oops, butterfly effect. Sorry about that.
Oopsie daisy. Sorry about that, chap.
Alright, so when their relationship began, Mia was coming into it with 7 children. So it was the 3 biological children with her previous husband, Andre Previn.
I'll
There
pause
was,
for 1 second.
Mhm.
Is that the cat making that sound?
Yeah, she's rubbing up against
It's like a sliding sound? Okay. That's okay, because the microphone's picking it up.
Sorry.
You're
I
fine.
had no idea that was picking it up. She was just rubbing it
It's
because she
okay.
wanted attention.
Listen, I didn't know my eating was getting picked up, so
Like all you heard was rub. They're so
I did hear a
the
rub.
cat is like they're so creepy.
It's like a fucking python.
She was on this on the screen. She was like,
Oh
like
man.
oh, okay. So when their relationship began, Mia was coming into it with 7 children. So she had 3 biological Andre Previn sons and her adopted children. So there were the daughters, Lark, Summer, and Sunyi, and her adopted son Moses. Sunyi was 10 years old when she first met her stepfather and then husband, Woody Allen. So Farrow tried conceiving a child with Woody. He agreed only on the basis that he wouldn't have to deal with the child at all and that he wouldn't be involved in the child care. Mia failed to get pregnant and they adopted baby girl Dylan to her detriment. They lived in separate apartments, as we said, across from each other, which was holly weird. They just did whatever back then. And it's just like, why did he even adopt the kids just to not help and not live with them and was also inappropriate? Like, we'll never understand that. Like, why did you even go through with it? Easy access?
Yeah, I mean, as we'll like get into later, you know what? I mean, so I it's hard for me to understand because she had 7 kids. And, there's this cultural thing about, oh, a single mom with like kids, you should stay away. But he came into her life. He adopted the kids. So they took, his last name, looked at him as a father figure, which he tries to deny for some reason later, which we can all see with our own eyes and read. But I mean, if what was the point if you were gonna say, okay, Mia, we'll have kids, but you have to promise I don't have to take care of them. Like, is that supposed to be a joke? No, it wasn't a joke. It was dead ass. And then you just live across the way from her, literally across the street. Like, you could look out each other's windows and wave to each other, which they did. So they didn't have breakfast together. He didn't like help with the kids. He was rarely over there. He had his own separate place. And they try to say, I guess it was so he could work, whatever. You can work in an office in an apartment. You don't have to have your separate place.
Writing the
But it
same
was like
fucking movie, just changing the character's
over and
name,
over
like,
again.
yeah, that was such hard work.
Oh, so hard. And so that's what I'll just never understand. Like, what was the point? We'll never understand because anytime Woody's interviewed, he just tries to dodge questions with his little squirrely. Like, if you just Google Woody Allen, I feel like people our age and younger, they probably don't even know who this person is really. But if you just Google any interview with him, I mean, the way he talks, his mannerisms, he makes you feel like you're ganging up on him or bullying him if you're asking too direct of questions, and he easily just dodges it because he's professional. I mean, he's like a million years old at this point. He's what, 88 years old. He's had a career spanning like 6 decades. He knows what he's doing. It's not a boys will be boys, innocent little Woody Allen. That's an old fucking powerful rich man, and he dodges these questions. So you'll never get a straight answer as to like what was the point of adopting 7 kids just to neglect them, but sorry, go on.
Okay, so we're just gonna talk about the children and how they came to be. So, Mia began the relationship with 7 children. She married Previn when she was 25 and he was 41, and she was an upgraded affair, and that pissed his wife off so fucking much that she wrote a song inspired by it called Beware of Young Girls, which is like hilarious. Like, that really pissed that woman off.
And it's very Blake Boomery because it's like, is it really the young girls you have to be aware of, or is it the Andre Previns and Woody Allens of the world that fool around with the young girls that are half their age?
Yeah, it's just like, why Mia? Why Mia in this? Your husband left. But as we said, boomer women. So she has very complicated relationships with her children with like a lot of abuse allegations, mostly from the minority children. We're going to specify that. And a lot of her children are suffering from like severe mental health issues. 2 died from suicide, and she tried to cover that up until like their autopsies came out. And she's also tried to like brush off concern of her adopting all these children and like questions of why they're having short, brutal lives under her, and like why she specifically wants to adopt so many minority children. And these are the children that she like acquired because they said like I was like going through like her attempted adoptions, and it was like she was like hunting for kids all of the time.
It's so weird. And like, I just wanted to mention, like, people don't really know this, or it's not really talked about a lot, but adoption isn't something that's just black and white. Like, and I've learned this from people who have been adopted themselves. You don't just, go to an orphanage, pick up a child, and then just take them home and they just seamlessly blend into your family. It's not like that at all, especially if you're adopting a kid from another country. First of all, a lot of the time the parents are still alive. And in some situations, like especially the kids coming from like war-torn countries, a lot of the times the parents don't even know. Like the kids are being stolen and then sold overseas. And so imagine that. Like you get stolen, your identity background is stolen. You have no, frame of reference for your former life or your former culture. You get sold to some American woman who she's always off acting and doing stuff. She doesn't really have time for you. So you're just being raised in this strange place by nannies. Like it's just a crazy situation. And that's not to include things like mental illness or like health issues that maybe run in your family that you don't have a record of, again because you're adopted, you don't know these things. And so if you get adopted by someone who's not prepared to help you with those things or just doesn't care, then it just doesn't work out well, and we'll get into that with some of these kids of Mia's.
Yeah, it's actually really awful. I wonder how many of the kids like their problems started from like attachment issues. Like they already get ripped from their parents, and then they get placed in another country, and then they're with Mia, and it's like, oh my god, I finally have like a parent to attach. Like attachment is a crazy foundation of mental health and being like a stable person. And she's
Hmm.
gone all of the time. Like finally you have that foundation. It's like she's gone, then you have like a rotating caretaker, and that's not That's not attachment. Like, that's not good. But yeah, we're gonna get into the
It's
kids.
unstable.
It's really bad.
Mhm.
It's really bad. Like, there's studies on it and everything. Like, it really really messes a kid up. So, first kid, well, they were twins. First two kids were Matthew and Sasha, and they were by the Previn guy. So Matthew, he's a lawyer, and Sasha, he's a stay-at-home dad. He's a passenger princess.
He kicked his feet up on the dash. He's like, "Honey, you got this. You're the one with all the money."
Really, they're chilling. They don't say anything. They're fine. Then there's Lark Brevin. This is really sad. She was born February 15, 1973, and she actually died December 25th in 2008. She was Vietnamese. Her adopted father was Andre. She was troubled, she was a real big shoplifter. And she died actually at 35 years old on Christmas Day from complication of AIDS. She had two daughters, which is insane to think that somebody died of AIDS in 2008. So what was going on?
Mhm. There had to be a lot more going on there. And I mean, shoplifting when, your parents are millionaires. Andre Previn's a millionaire, Mia Farrow's a millionaire. That's a sign of something going on.
Yeah, like a cry for help, because, like, why are you doing that? You don't have to do that.
Right.
Next one is Fletcher. That's a biological child of Andre. He's a chief information officer of IBM. He lives next door to Mia. Very normal relationship with her. He's married. Then there's
Good for him.
Summer Daisy Previn. She was adopted in 1976. She's Vietnamese. She also had a severe history with shoplifting. Adopted father is Andre. She's married. She never really had problems after that. No complaints from her.
But once again, it's like the shoplifting. Why are they shoplifting? Again, it's not because they need to. It's like, were they being so neglected where their parents weren't even like, here's $5 to get a sandwich? They were just out like acting and directing and doing whatever and just ignoring them. Was it mental health? I mean, we have no idea. So,
Yeah. So then we get into Moses Farrow. Now, Moses is very vocal about Mia. He was adopted in 1980, and he was two when he was adopted. Adopted from Korea. He has cerebral palsy, and Woody actually co adopted him. He hates Mia, and he stands by Woody. And he said that she brainwashed them and coached him and Suni to hate him. Says he was physically abused by Mia, and he's married with a family, and he's also a family therapist now that focuses on children that are having trouble blending into adopted families. So take that as you will.
mhm. And, the fact that he had cerebral palsy, it just kind of goes back to what I said before. It's like the the background, the history of like whatever conditions they have, like he should have been specifically adopted to like a family that was equipped to be able to handle somebody with a condition like that. Obviously, these people who adopted him were not, which explains, why today he's a family therapist that specializes on it like adoption. So
Yeah, that's a really messed up thing for your kid to grow up to be. Like, that's a real
right,
reflection on you
just
as a parent.
says a lot.
Next, we have Dylan Farrell. That's a girl. She was adopted in 1985 at 2 weeks old. Woody then co-adopted her. She has accused him of sexually assaulting her. She is also a writer and advocate of survivors of CSA. She's married with a child. She was the one that started the whole big court case by telling Mia that she was sexually assaulted by Woody.
And that I think she also said she witnessed other kids being assaulted by him as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. She there's a lot of that when we get to her section. We don't want to. There's like a whole big thing. She
Hmm.
got the ball rolling with that. Then there's Ronan Farrow. He was also known as Satchel, but that was a stupid ass name, so they changed it to Rowan. And he's a boy. Nobody knows who his biological father is. I swear to God, nobody knows.
We know the mom is Mia. That's what we
Mom's
know.
yeah, he's a journalist. He actually was really involved in the Harvey Weinstein thing.
The Me Too movement, he was, like, really, like, instrumental in getting the voices of people who had been, like, sexually assaulted in Hollywood, so that was huge.
Yeah, he's actually seems like a pretty great guy, but yeah, he might be Frank Sinatra's kid because again, this was Hollyweird with boomers. And Mia never stopped messing around with Frank Sinatra after she was like briefly married to him when she was a teenager. And it's just like even Woody's like, I'm not sure that kid is mine, but like he paid child support for it, and they're all like, we don't we don't care at this point. Like, I'm not getting DNA tested. Do you want to get DNA tested? And Ron's like, no. So
Right? And Mia, like, she, tried to get pregnant by Woody for a while, and it just never happened, and so then to just randomly get pregnant by this kid who looks nothing like Woody, looks a lot like Frank fucking Sinatra. I mean, take that as you will, but yeah, they won't get the testing done. I mean, at this point, I don't really blame them. It's like, what good does it do? Because Frank Sinatra also has his own fucking family, like Frank Sinatra Jr. and all those other kids. Like it's just what's the point? What's it gonna do?
yeah, his other kids were like kind of mad about it at first, and I think they just accepted it too. They're like, yeah, he may be our brother, he may not be. We still like him, so whatever.
Oh man.
So he said, and on a quote himself, he said, "My father is married to my sister. I am his son and his brother-in-law. That is such a moral transgression," and I think we agree with Ronan.
We are on your side, Ronan. Thank you for your service, Ronan Farrow.
He just spelled it out plainly. He's just like, just think about this. I don't like that.
You're his son and brother-in-law. Like, you don't need to complicate it further. We're good. We're good.
Okay, then there's Tam Farrow. She was adopted in 1992, born in 1979, and she died in 2000. She's a girl and she's blind. Mia said that she died of cardiac arrest, but actually Moses revealed that she died from suicide at 19 years old after taking prescription medication after a big fallout fight with Mia. She had a lifelong battle with depression, and eventually Mia actually confessed to her suicide in 2021 after trying to whitewash her death. Eventually, and like it came out that she tried to erase her pictures from family photos.
That's so fucking disturbing. I mean, that's what people like Hitler and Stalin did whenever like friends betrayed them. They would just slowly erase them from pictures until it's just like them and one other person standing there. Like, I mean, that's a psychotic thing to do. If that was your adopted child, regardless of the circumstance of their death, like for you to erase them from photos, that shows that you care more about your image than the actual child. So why were you adopting kids at all? And then especially kids with disabilities like blindness, cerebral palsy, like, maybe you could have just not done that. Like I think we'll see that more like coming out with people like Madonna or like whoever, just like adopting all these kids. Like you just can't really do that. You don't specialize in their care. You're an international celebrity. You're busy. You don't have the time to devote to helping them. Oh, that's something that just really pisses me off so much. Oh man.
It makes no sense. Like, it's just the fact that she tried to
Mm-mm.
erase her existence. It's like, oops, I messed up with that one. Never mind. Just try to white her out. Like, white out.
Psychotic. Psychotic. They didn't have Photoshop back then, so you were really
Yeah, she
like
was really determined, and everybody's like, "What are you talking about? We remember Tam. She was right there until she wasn't."
and it was because of you, bitch. Like, why are you fighting? Why are you beefing with a 19-year-old? Like, I get that teenagers are a little, testy, but like,
She
oh
was
my
blind. What
goodness.
more? What could she really do?
Right. Like all these kids, all the struggles that they had, it's all just cries for help. Like maybe take a break from acting and focus on your 100 kids. We're only halfway through, a little more than halfway through the amount of kids that this bitch had. Like it was so many kids. It was like 14 kids. Like it was really
We're really not
ridiculous.
even done. Like I'm still going, and we're not even
Still
done with the
going.
deaths yet. I'm sorry.
Right.
All right, next was Thaddeus Farrow. He was adopted in 1994, but he was born in 1988, and his death was on September the 21st, 2016. He was from India, and he was also paralyzed from the waist down after surviving polio. Now, they try to say he died from a car crash, but he actually died from suicide after shooting himself in the car. Now, how do you confuse an abdominal shooting injury with a car crash?
You know how you confuse it? You have a lot of money, you be in Hollywood, and you tell people your version, which is a complete bullshit. Like, and people just believed it. Again, there's no social media or like independent journalism. People just accept the narrative. Like, what did the car crash into? Nothing. The car was fine. He committed suicide because once again, he was a neglected adopted child that Mia Farrow did not help with his conditions. And we know Woody Allen wasn't, so
Oh, sure, no, wasn't his type. We'll get into that.
yo.
So then there's Kaylee Shea, who changed her name to Quincy Farrow. She was adopted and born in 1994, and she was born addicted to crack cocaine. She's Black American, and not much is known about her except that she's alive despite being a minority. So good for her. Good for her.
A minority in the Mia Farrow bunch, like
Those are bad
somehow by the
odds for a kid.
girl, by the grace of God, she survived.
She also survived super COVID. She was in the hospital for that. That was like the only thing I could find out about that girl.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
I tell people I had super COVID, but it was just pregnancy. I was
thank
pregnant
God.
and I
You got a baby out of it. She got me.
just got a baby. Yeah. Oh goodness.
Then there's Frankie Min Farrow. She was adopted in 1995, but she was born in 1989. Another Vietnamese child. She was blind like Tam. Nothing is known about her.
Status unknown, which is very unusual for the children of celebrities.
Oh, did I skip Isaiah? There's also Isaiah Farrow. He was adopted and born in 1992, and he was also born addicted to crack cocaine. Black American. Nothing's known about him. He survived though. That one survived. That's known about him. He survived.
Right? He's a survivor.
And lastly, who we saved for last for obvious reason, was Soon Yi Farrow. And she was adopted in 1977 but born in 1970. Now, this is kind of a doozy. Her birthday is not truly known, as she was found abandoned, and her birth date is literally like an estimate based on a bone scan in Korea with like kind of janky tools back then because Korea was not doing well in the 70s. So, yeah. Her adopted father is Andre, but Woody co adopted her when he met her when she was 10 or 8. Tens of round up. Um, she'll have her own part for obvious reasons, as she came to be Woody's stepdaughter wife, a fair partner.
And I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't even a bone scan done and it was just like Woody Allen just put out this narrative that there was. I mean, he has that kind of power and influence just to age her up, just to say, well, she was 10, not 8. Huge difference.
Yeah, like, sure.
Yeah, so let's get into the accusations and abuse um perpetuated by Woody Allen. So all of these events are happening while Dylan Farrow, who we mentioned is he was adopted, or I'm sorry, she was adopted in 1985 at 2 weeks old, co-adopted by Woody Allen, and so she was 7. So Woody Allen randomly had taken a weird and smothering interest in Dylan. And apparently, at one point, she locked herself in the bathroom when Woody Allen came home. And an employee, like one of Mia Farrow's like house employees, had to like pick the lock to let her out. She was in there for 4 hours refusing to come out. And that is very abnormal for a 7-year-old. I mean, if you have kids, which if you're listening to this show, you probably do, your kids are up your ass 24/7 if they can be. 7 years old, locking yourself in the bathroom for 4 hours, that's very unusual. But anyway, so he admitted he did really weird, inappropriate shit around and to her that we are not going to get into detail about. All we need to say is that he admitted he did some weird shit. And the things he admitted to were not exactly illegal, but it's not something that you would want someone to do to a child. So, take that as you will. I mean, you can Google it, whatever. But Dylan alleged that Woody Allen had touched her inappropriately, but a pediatrician and authorities could not really find evidence, which doesn't mean anything, but that's just what happened. So, an employee allegedly caught the act and reported it to Mia. And so while the courts were figuring out what to do during the fall of 1992, Dylan was asked to play with anatomically correct dolls with the Connecticut State Police, which, if you're not sure what that means, it's like dolls that have their correct parts to be like, as a 7-year-old, you shouldn't really know how to like simulate sexual acts or whatever with dolls. But she made the dolls have intercourse, and she said the dolls were Alan and Soon Yi. And she said that she also witnessed this with her brother Ronan. And she said daddies are not supposed to act like boyfriends. Again, 7 years old, which when I was 7, I was playing with anatomically incorrect, like Barbie dolls and stuffed animals. They were not hunching. I mean, this is normal for a normal 7-year-old. Like the things that she's describing that she witnessed, people will go on to claim that like Mia coached her to say that. I don't believe that. But anyway,
I don't even think that they knew that. I don't think Mia even knew that they were going to make her play with the dolls. And also, when I say that she simulated intercourse, I mean she actually simulated intercourse. I mean P and V.
ugh, so
As a
disturbing.
7-year-old, like she wasn't just doing like movements. Like she literally showed them like this is what happens.
Right. And again, this guy didn't even live with them. He lived across the way in a different apartment. So, like, regardless, so their babysitters were split, which with all those kids, they had to have like, multiple babysitters. They couldn't just have one handling all those kids. So one of the sitters said that she suspected Woody Allen. The other, who was not present in the house on that day when she was locked herself away, she said that she felt pressured by Mia Farrow to support her side. And the judge, however, still found Allen's actions grossly inappropriate, even though he rejected that it was sexual abuse. Which I'm like, so it's in a gray area. That still should not be a thing. You should not have a gray area with people who are supposed to be your children. Um, and so he was denied visitation and custody of the kids that he adopted with Mia Farrow after that. But as we see, didn't stop him.
Nothing stops a diddler. So let's get into his relationship with Soon-Yi. We can't call it anything but a relationship, unfortunately. So they both recall that Woody literally largely ignored her until she hit puberty, which is already a fucking red flag. Like, what the fuck? But Soon-Yi recalls Mia didn't teach her how to wear a bra or handle her period, and she deeply resented her for it. Then, all of a sudden, Woody cast her to briefly appear in his movie Hannah and Her Sisters, which repeatedly references child molestation, which is like, what the fuck? And Alan's character jokingly claims, half the country's doing it. What?
Like, what the fuck? This is the kind of humor that people, I mean, it's not that they found funny back then, but people like Woody Allen like normalize this kind of humor. There's nothing funny about that. Half the country doing it. What? That's supposed to be a joke? Like, I'm sorry, I'm getting hype right now because
That's just
that's so
upsetting.
disturbing.
That's not even like dark
It
humor. Like,
is
where's
so
the joke?
upsetting.
What's the punchline?
Right, what's the punchline?
Like everybody's looking at each other like, what?
But I mean, he just kept making movies and people kept watching them. There was nothing really else to see back then. So,
Yeah. So, after she hits puberty, they began regular and friendly interactions starting when she was in 11th grade when Alan began driving her to school alone after she had an injury while playing soccer. By no-
and he doesn't give a fuck about any of these other
oh,
adopted
the other
kids,
kids, he's
but he's
just like,
going out of his
whatever,
way.
do whatever. I'm driving Sunyi to school.
Right.
You can
It
walk
doesn't
for
make
all I
any sense.
care, especially you, Moses, who has cerebral palsy. Like, what?
I'm so dead. It's like 14 kids. You're driving one of them to one school. Get the fuck out of here.
And by 1990, they began regularly attending Knicks baseball games completely alone together. So,
Which, again, how many kids did he have? And they're going to Knicks
what?
basketball games, like, just with the one kid. You have 14 kids. I'm sure all the kids want to see basketball. You're taking one.
Can you
Okay,
imagine,
sure.
though? Like, they're getting all suited up to go to the game. It's like, well, Dad, I like baseball. No, not you, only Sunyi. And she just goes out the door.
I mean, and I'm sure, Woody Allen, he's a big celebrity. I'm sure he had like courtside basketball, Knicks tickets, and again, taking one kid. Okay,
I would
let's
bawl my eyes
suspend.
out.
Right, let's suspend our belief in like reality and fairness and be like, okay, yeah, that's
Even if
totally
I didn't
normal.
like baseball, that blatant favoritism would make me
Oh, it's
bawl.
basketball. Basketball.
Oh, shit. I'm not good at
Yeah, the Knicks, New York Knicks basketball. I think they play at Madison Square Garden, so
do
they
they?
probably took the subway. Yeah,
Makes it
but I'm sorry.
worse.
Right, like you could have taken the whole family down to Knicks games. You're taking one kid.
Oh man. Alright. 1992. So this is a big year. Mia and Woody's relationship had already soured because like Woody's already taken like a weird and like they already noticed that he's like really weird and disturbingly interested in Dylan. Like again, he did some really untoward stuff to her that isn't exactly illegal, but you don't want somebody doing that to a kid. So like she can't call the cops on him exactly, but a judge is going to be like, I don't want you alone with her. So he gets ordered to see a therapist about that. So Mia's on high alert and she does some snooping around his separate house from her. Like, what the fuck you got going on here? Like, why are you being so weird to Dylan? Like, why is Dylan so upset? So she does the snooping, and in January 1992, Mia discovered nude and extremely erotic photographs of Soon Yi in Woody's home on his mantle. Woody was 56 at this time. Soon Yi was allegedly 22 or 20, or 19 for all we know. Nobody knows her real age. The pictures were taken 2 weeks after they allegedly first had sex.
And he tries to claim that like, oh, it's just modeling. She was just doing modeling. Like, what? What?
She
Because
was
people ask him
not
about
doing
it.
modeling. They said
No.
that Mia, like when she found them, she almost threw up because like she was spread eagle.
And that's her child. That's both of their child. I mean, as you see, like, as we're talking about, people think adoption is like you just seamlessly blend into the family, like one of the children. He was obviously not treating her like that. And so, can you imagine seeing pictures of your child like that? Like,
I
fuck.
would rather not. Not
I
with
would
me
die.
yowling
I would die
in
and
my
then kill
mind.
him.
So Sunyi admitted that Alan started the affair. Alan stated in court that he thought he could keep it a secret and nobody in the world would know, which, yeah, sure. She admits that she knew that she was betraying her mother, but since like Mia was such a shitty mom and gave her no attention or affection, she was like thrilled to finally be getting some attention or affection from somebody. So she literally relished in it.
Classic. Classic grooming.
And it's also said that people close to the family said that, like, Soon Yi was the weakest of them all because, like, Mia hated her the most, and
Bullshit.
yeah, she was, like, like, least favorite
The
child of Mia,
scapegoat.
like, she just was, like, pushed off to the side, like, the quiet child, so she was the most vulnerable, and, Alan said to Mia's face that the affair was good for Soon Yi's self-esteem, who self-esteem was in the toilet, obviously, because your mom doesn't love you. And Mia slapped the shit out of him for this, and then the whole family proceeded to just have dinner about it, like immediately after that. So it was very dysfunctional over there.
It's like, what could you do?
Yeah,
Like your mom slapped the shit out of your dad. You know what? He kind of deserved it. Let's have some
yeah,
chicken.
like okay, pass the salt.
You hungry?
Yeah, pass.
Alright.
So the thing about Mia is she didn't even immediately leave after discovering like the photos that he took of Soon Yi. Like that's how much she cared about her. Instead,
Ugh.
she stayed with him and worked on the movie Husbands and Wives, a movie where Woody's character has a sexual relationship with his 21-year-old college student. Mia stayed because she reportedly didn't want to ruin Woody's reputation.
And I put in the notes, I'm like, this is just classic boomer shit that we mentioned earlier in the episode. It's like I've seen this debate on Twitter today where people were talking about Chris Brown, and it's like people are like, "Do you know like older generations of women that defend him, like they were so used to being raised in a culture of like abuse that they're like, "Oh, just move on, just forget it." Like you don't want to ruin somebody's reputation. It was a different time.
I
Like, no,
absolutely
you're a
will.
victim.
I will kamikaze us both. I'm taking you down with me. Like, what?
Right. Like, that's why I have so much hope for Gen Z because, millennials were kind of cooked, but like Gen Z, they don't take that shit like lying down for the most part. Like, a lot of them understand what rape culture means. They have boundaries. Like, they've learned how to not let, like, powerful men control. Like, they grew up watching, like, the Me Too movement. And like I have more hope for them, but it's like you see somebody like Mia, I don't want to ruin his reputation. He had pictures of your daughter, like completely nude, doing whatever, and you're just like, well, can't mess up my career. Don't want to mess up his career, so we got to keep working. Like, get the fuck out of here, bitch. So, in the middle of that same year, when all that stuff was discovered in 1992, Suni claims that Mia physically abused her, and Moses backs up her claims. Mia would often call Woody in the middle of the night to threaten to gouge out his eyes, and she would then ask if Sunyi was better in bed than her, which it's like, why is that what you're asking?
What?
It sounds like she was drunk and she probably felt powerless because at this point, legally, Sunyi was probably an adult. She couldn't do anything about it. All she could do was just call and harass them, which is psychotic. And I think Woody kind of used that against her to like paint her as this crazy person. Um, but anyway, Sunyi like went to a summer camp, but she was asked to leave because she was having too much secret contact with her stepfather, which is so insane. Like, I mean, I don't know how summer camps were back then, but if you go to summer camp now, you can call your parents. Like, it's not a big deal. You can call your parents. But I think she was just calling him so much and vice versa that it was like being too much. I mean, they didn't really have cell phones back then, so it's probably like phones ringing all hours of the night all the time, which is fucking weird.
Oh yeah, and like phones back then. Can you imagine if like a camp counselor was just like, I wonder what they're talking about, and just picked up a phone and listened?
Right.
I
And then be
was
like,
like,
bitch, you
oh
gotta get out of
no,
here.
you gotta go.
Tell your stepdad to come get you. So so Alan denies being Suni's father or stepfather or anything to her. And this is something that really pisses me off about this whole situation because as I mentioned, he had a really good PR team that helped make it look like, oh, he didn't do anything wrong. He lived across the street. But as we mentioned, he was driving her to school. She had like a soccer injury, so he was driving her to school. So that's not something a parent figure does. He adopted her. She was like his adopted daughter. Like That's not something like, he had such a strong PR campaign that it just pulled the wool over the eyes of people who already didn't wanna see something bad. So, he denies being any kind of a father to her, and he declared his love for her later in '92, and I feel like it kind of, like, forced his hand to make that claim because I feel like if he didn't kind of own it, it would look a lot worse than it did. But regardless of that, Mia heard that and she was like, "You know what? Fine. Just take her and go." Which that's your daughter, but anyway, so that was in '92. They didn't get married until '97. And so at that point, she was around 27 years old and he was 62 years old. Yuck. And the fact that he's still alive just really bothers my soul at 88. But
Oh
anyway,
god.
so right, like, I mean, it's time. It's time to go. Take him. So, Sun Yi remained estranged from Mia Farrow to this day. She does not talk publicly, like, for decades. She has not talked publicly, and I think we can all guess why. I mean, what is there to say that wouldn't just make the situation look worse? She probably thinks, like, "Oh, if I just shrink myself, like, people will just kind of forget that I'm married to my dad," but whatever. So they have 2 adopted daughters together, her and Woody Allen. So the cycle just fucking continued. And not for nothing, they were close friends with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. So, mm, I mean, that's Hollywood for you, right? But so Sun Yi, in my opinion, she is like the textbook example of somebody who has been groomed. Like, I mean, you just kind of see in the way that she doesn't talk publicly about the situation. She's like estranged from anybody who could, kind of show her that maybe things were wrong. Like, she just doesn't have a past. She felt like she wasn't really getting love from her mother figure. And so somebody shows her what she thinks is love. And I mean, they've been married ever since 1997. It's a long fucking time. Um, and then with fucking Woody Allen, I mean, in his PR campaign, like, if you do some research, like, Dylan Farrow has written extensively about this, and she's a very good, like, detailed writer. But it's like, if you just look at someone like the court cases and the things that came out, how he was able to just kind of squash it and be like, "Oh, ha ha, I'm just Woody Allen. I didn't do all that." Like, you can see some parallels between him and like someone like Roman Polanski, who we mentioned in this episode when you have like these talented, quote unquote, talented white male directors in Hollywood, they don't really face punishment. I mean, Woody Allen is still he was winning awards as recently as like 2014, if not later. Like, I mean, he still was making movies up until that point.
I think
Roman
both
Polanski.
him and Woody and Roman were like seen together at like the Venice Film Festival, and everybody was like, "Oh, the masters are back! They're such a master at their craft." And like, what the fuck
Like,
are
they
you
are
talking about?
rapists.
What the fuck are you talking
Roman
about?
Polanski is 90 years old. Why are you still
And what
alive?
Roman Polanski
Like,
did, they're like, "Oh, she shouldn't have been there at that time." It's like, no, you have to read what he did because what he did to that girl was
oh, yeah.
insane.
Disgusting. I mean, he drugged her. She was 13 years old. And then he was supposed to, like, go in front of a judge. This is in the '70s, late '70s. He just fled the US and he just continued on, working on movies. Like, I mean, who do you know that has that much power that could get away with something like that? And he's been back to the US. I mean, because he still directs movies. Like, where's Hollywood? It's in the US. He just comes and goes as he wants, but like nobody makes any move to arrest him. He's 90 years old and everybody still loves his shitty movies. Like, I hate Hollywood so much.
I hate the
But you
people that
just kind of see the
support it.
parallels.
And I hate the people that think when
Right.
they support shitty people just because of the art that it makes them seem like they're like so high class and they have such good taste. Like, no, you don't. You really, really
Right. Like
don't.
oh, you got to separate the art from the artist. Like, listen, I don't listen to Chris Brown. I don't think he's that good. I don't think he's that talented. But regardless of that, he not only beat up women, he continues to beat up women. He tries to portray himself as this family man. I mean, we did a whole episode about it. Go listen to the Chris Brown episode. But like you see how there's just no accountability, there's no justice. I mean, to this day, Chris Brown's still harassing the girl who had the 5-year restraining order against him. And people like Jill Scott recently are like, you guys just gotta let it go. The art, the artist, the talent, it's still there. Like, shut the fuck up. Roman Polanski, fucking Woody Allen, Chris Brown, so many of these fucking terrible baby daddies. Like, go to hell. You should be in under the jail. Like, seriously. Like, how are you still working and having a career?
You know what's crazy? I literally just saw in the Chris Brown comments like the what aboutism too. It's just like, well, Chris Brown beat that woman up, but what about Roman Polanski? It's like fuck them both. What are you talking about? What are you
Right.
talking
Or
about?
everyone's like, people come after Bill Cosby and R. Kelly, but what about no, they should all be in hell. Like they can't leave people alone. They have so much they harm people so much. It's so bad.
Yeah, so we gotta close this with some hard hitting questions, man. So what's up with Mia and why was she adopting all these kids? What
I
was
think
that?
I think Mia Farrow was like chasing something like which you see a lot with like actors and actresses, they're chasing adoration. And who's gonna adore you the most? Kids. And, she had some biological ones, but I mean, you just I guess she just got addicted to collecting more and more of them. And you see this a lot with people and some women like who adopt kids, they just expect them to be like, "Oh, well you pulled me out of poverty, like you saved me, you're my hero." But it's a kid. They don't really know what's going on, so you don't really get that adoration. That you get a lot of confusion and like I mean, they want help, that you're not prepared to give. You don't know how to deal with someone who's blind or has cerebral palsy or like mental health issues. So it just creates this like toxic soup and she did it so many times that it just completely fucked up this family.
Yeah, I really don't get it. Like a lot of the things just don't make sense. Like with all of the money both of them had, like everybody involved had all of the adults. How did Lark get AIDS? And how did she die of it in 2008? Like she didn't die of it in the 80s or the early 90s where there wasn't any therapy for it. She died of it in 2008 on Christmas.
She had to have just been not getting any help, any treatment, which just says a lot about that shitty family and how shitty of a person Mia Farrow is. You don't know what you're even though she would have been an adult at the time, you don't know what she's up to. She had 2 kids, those are your grandkids. You weren't keeping up with her, saying that she was sick and that she needed help.
No, I
Like,
don't care. Like my daughter isn't going to go out like that. Like that's a horrible death.
right. And not to just keep piling on Mia because obviously this Lark wasn't Lark was Lark one of the Previn kids or one of the
Yeah,
let's see, Lark
Andre
was
Prefin was her father. That's
yeah,
what I'm
Andre
saying. All the
Previn.
adults involved with all this money, nobody helped her.
It just doesn't make any sense. And so we haven't really talked that much about like Andre Previn and what he did, but he was a famous like pianist and composer. So he like did a lot of like scores for like Hollywood films. Like he was very wealthy. He died, thankfully. One of the people in these stories died at 89 years old. Like these people just lived forever. He died in 2019. But it's like you obviously outlived your adopted daughter. You weren't checking on her. These are just really narcissistic, self-obsessed, self-absorbed people. And these children of color could not adapt in this family and they just did not care. So, why do you think some of the kids are accusing Mia Farrow of abuse? The children of color mostly, while the white children mostly say that like she's great.
Honestly, I think they just got two sides. I really think that they did. I really think that they did because, like, again, like you see, like so many testimonies of kids, like on YouTube, on TikTok. They'd be like, "Yeah, I was treated differently," and they're like, "I don't know why you adopted me. Like, you knew I was black. Why did you pick me? It wasn't a. It was a conscious choice." It wasn't a lottery.
That's very true, and you even see that in, like, biological families as well, where, like, one kid basically had a whole different childhood than another kid because they're narcissists. You have the scapegoat and you have the golden child, where the golden child can do no wrong, and the scapegoat, you just get slapped in the face because you, like, dropped something on the floor, basically, like, so I don't doubt that she treated some of the kids, the white kids, better than the adopted, children of color, so
Yeah. Also, like, are we really are we really believing that this dude didn't touch one daughter while he married the other one? Are we buying that?
fuck no, and I think that if Dylan had been more, like, receptive gross, it's gross to say that, but had been more receptive to, like, his advances, like, she would have been the Sunyi, basically, but when that didn't work out, he focused it on Sunyi and, like, basically ramped up his grooming tactics to make her think that it was a consensual mutual attraction when they were kids when they were adopted and met him, like, come on.
That was so violently gross. And also, like, how is he gonna tell us, like, "Oh, I'm not attracted to young girls," when every single one of the like, every form of media that you have pushed out has been about this topic.
It just goes to show you, like, you know how they say, like, what's done in the dark comes to light? I think he's one of those type of artists who you can't really hide the truth, and the truth is that he is attracted to young girls, and it was coming out in his artwork. And I guess people back then were so bamboozled by Hollywood, which not to say that people today aren't, but it's a very different kind of thing, you know, like for you and me, we look at celebrities. I mean, we talk about them all the time. I see celebrities out and about. I don't give a fuck. I don't know you. I've seen maybe something, a movie or like, you know, I dated an athlete, like, and I've watched a game, like, cool, great, good job, you're doing so good. But I don't know you. So I don't adore you. And I think we know enough about like behind the scenes of like Hollywood and the music industry and sports and stuff to know that it's not what the end product that we see. There's a lot more darker stuff that goes on that we're all aware of by now, which is why I'm so pissed that, like, TikTok is probably going away, like, this week if it passes in the Senate that, you know, it's gonna get banned because these are the kind of platforms that people back then could have benefited from. If somebody was posting on TikTok, "Hey, this guy's trying to marry his daughter," it would have been a public outcry, but everything was just
Hey,
so
you
done in the
can't do
dark.
that! Like,
That's your kid, bro, you can't do
back then
that.
they had that extra, extra on the corner, and that didn't go as fast.
I'm dead. But yeah, there was no social media to expose the shit. Cause I mean, even like the big publications like the New York Times and stuff, he as we mentioned, like he wrote and did like little cartoons and stuff for the New York Times. He had a relationship with them. So they weren't gonna report negatively, not too much, you know, on what he was doing. So that's why, you know, you need independent journalism that can't be owned and can't be bought by these
Oh, yeah,
people.
remember that, the Epstein stuff was already, like, presented to, what was it, CBS, like, 5 years before everything came out, but they really suppressed it because, money in hand. They were like, "We don't wanna talk about this. Don't talk about
Mhm.
this."
Yeah, they would just say, "Oh, you know, it's not proven. We don't have enough evidence." Like, really? You have victims coming forward. Just like in Woody Allen's own family, victims coming forward and people are still doubting them. Like, come on. Bullshit.
Diane Keaton saying, "Get over it."
Fuck you, Diane Keaton. Good God. So, Woody Allen, we fucking hate you, bro. Like, this is why you're on this show right now. I hope your 88-year-old ass puts in your hearing aid and listens to all your crimes being laid out like we just did. And I hope you know that we fucking hate you. D, how would we rate him on a scale from 1 to 5?
So 1 would be the worst, and I would say that's a Polaroid you definitely don't wanna shake, and 5 would be I couldn't come up with anything. All of this is awful, honestly. And he's definitely a one, so there we go.
Yeah, you don't wanna shake that Polaroid, you don't wanna see what's gonna develop, for lack of a better word,
You
once you
really
shake
don't want to
that.
see whatever he took.
Ugh, God. Disgusting. So, that is our episode, guys. I wanted to let you guys know that we have some, like, exciting stuff coming out. We wanted to do, like, a live on TikTok. If TikTok is still alive by the time Wednesday when this comes out, we are gonna do a live recording of an episode so you guys can like watch the process that goes into talking shit about these guys. And so yes, you can follow us on TikTok at YWHY Baby Daddy Pod. And where else can they follow us, D?
You can follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and YouTube.
Yep, why Baby Daddy Pod. We Hate Your Baby Daddy the podcast. You can just Google it, honestly. I mean, there's so much. We're on so many platforms at this point. And you know what? Check out our merch. We have t-shirts, we have tote bags, now we have stickers. So you can get some stickers and like stick them on your stuff or like just stick them somewhere where someone can see and be like, you know what? That podcast sounds cool. Check it out. And then we'll just get some new fans that way. That'll be fun. And you know what? If you made it this far, leave us a review. Say something nice. Be like, I love these girls, even though Brie eats during recordings sometimes. Or as my mom said, oh, towards the end of that, you were slurring a little bit. You sound kind of drunk. Like, Mom, really?
I'm sorry
So,
if you hear my unk
despite all
noise in the
that,
background. I have so many unks in my neighborhood, and
Philly unk
they
noises
just
just
start blasting
booming through
stuff
the
in their
streets,
motorcycles, their Harley Davidson.
blasting One Nation under the groove.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh no.
No, I'm trying to record. But yeah, like, share our show because we are really growing. I mean, I looked at our follower count and I'm just like, wow, like people love the show. So show us some love. Leave us 5 stars, leave a review, share, tell a friend about us. And yeah, so every Wednesday at midnight Eastern Standard Time, check us out. We love you guys. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Not the cat interrupting the bye.
I'm sorry.
Bye.